Soumya, good luck to you and Sriji and everybody.
Thank you. Hi everyone. My name is Spandan, and let's just wait for a couple of more minutes. Then we'll begin with the presentation.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Tapsi.
Hi, Tapsi.
Hi.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Ajay. Hi, Amulya.
Hi,
Divya.
Tapsi.
So just let us know when to start, okay?
Sure. Hi, Shanmuga. Good evening.
Hi, Tipsy. Good evening. Good evening, all.
Hello, Vignesh.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. So if everyone is here, could we begin? Are the GTs ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Yeah, ready as we'll ever be. We'll start.
Good
Okay.
to hear that. All right. So I hand it over to you. Maybe you can begin.
Okay.
All right,
So
Spandan, I'll go ahead then.
yeah, please present. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the project presentation of the Amadeus 2021 GETs. Hopefully this will demonstrate that we are ready to hit the floor running. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next slide. That's the title slide. Sure, we're all aware. Okay, so today's agenda. So before we start on the project, I'll explain a little about the training we underwent, and then I'll set the context for the project. We'll explain the features, and then we will demo the working. In the end, we can have a code review if everyone's still interested. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So first is the learning roadmap of our training. We already went over this once, I think, last meeting. So our iteration 0 was self-learning, and iteration 1 and 2 were instructor-led, so was 3. And now we finally have the project, the ROS, which we'll be demonstrating now. And after this, we have front-end technologies, which will be for another 5 days. So this is basically a learning roadmap. And let's go to the next slide. So these are the labs that we did. We had very similar, very easy algorithmic, like linear search and all that in the beginning. Then we moved on to OO and unit testing and JDBC. Then we had Spring Boot, an entire week for Spring Boot, Hibernate and all that. And finally, we have search engine and other collaborative projects like the ROS. That is what we'll be demonstrating today. Now, I am sure you're all familiar with these technologies, and hopefully now we are also familiar with these, at least mostly. Yeah. So this is a screenshot of our dashboard in the portal, the Skillshare portal. Each of these modules have a ton of coursework in them. Some of these we did ourselves. Some of that was instructor-led. And you see we had regular assessments, usually regarding the most important topics. So Spring, Hibernate, and all that. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, yes, this is a feedback form. I mean, yeah, the feedback form, which I'm sure every one of us very religiously filled every day. Okay, so I didn't. Yeah, okay, finally, the project, the Restaurant One solution. So titled Restaurant One Solution, it is an all-in-one solution for restaurant and their personnel. Everything from HR functions like payroll, of which I was a part of, to inventory and suppliers, to reports and budgeting. Everything is included in this comprehensive software solution. It's meant for both Indian companies and outside. So this is the workflow that we were following. The developer and Eclipse IDE, that is the portion we were concerned with, but the Jenkins building and all of that, we have a good idea about how it was all carried out. We didn't do it personally, but we had a KT regarding that. So let's go to the next. Yeah, so this is the solution architecture. This is the ROS architecture. And as GETs, as the Java GETs, we were only concerned with the bottom box here with all the services, not all of them, only a small portion, right? The identity service, accounting service, these we implemented. So this is the technology landscape of the project itself. So we didn't work on all of this because JavaScript, HTML, this is front end. We didn't take care of that. But Azure, we have a slight idea of. Git, SonarQube, we had a KT for that. So somewhat we are aware of these technologies. And finally, let's get to the features. Let's get to, there's still the workflow. So we had 5 days for this project, and 3 more if you include the weekend and the holiday that we supposedly had. Quite a few of us actually worked over the holiday. So first we had the requirement understanding and requirement documentation. This requirement documentation ran up to 50, 70 pages for some teams. Then we had the architecture and design, which was centralized and then decentralized. Then we had the code implementation, which took relatively less time compared to the integration. That was over all the teams, and several merge conflicts had to be, solved. Then we had unit testing, and finally the final release that was, I think, late last evening or today morning for some teams. And there was a code review afterwards and bug fixing that took place, and that is this morning. And then we were finally done with the final release, and here we are at number point 10, review presentation. So I'll get to the features now. I'll take the respective teams will explain the features, and then they will demo their functionalities. Okay, so I'll let HR take it from here.
Yeah, thank you, Spandan. Good evening, everybody. So as Spandan mentioned, we worked on various modules, one of them being the HR module, which again was subdivided to multiple modules. The profile request modules, which dealt with all the employee profiles. We had the payroll module, which dealt with payroll, as the name suggests, and we had some restaurant management modules. So I'll walk you through the profile request module. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so these were the features that we had to implement. So for any employee profile, as we'll see in the upcoming slides, there's a lot of things to do. So basically, we had 3 subcategories: the viewing, the editing, and the approval and the rejection from the managerial point of view. We could view all the profile data that an employee has. The employee had the functionality to edit any of these, which then will require a managerial approval, for which we had the third subcategory, that is of approval and rejection. Next slide. Yeah, so this is how the profile section looks like for any employee under ROS. As we see, the profile has various sub-profile children profiles, like if you see the bank details, shifts, documents, statutory statements. All of these are there for every single employee. They have a lot of data pertaining to the employee stored. If you can go to the next slide, Ajay. Yeah, so any of this data can be edited by the employee whenever they want to update any changes that are happening. Once that is done, it requires a managerial approval. Which we'll be showcasing in the next slide. Yeah. So this is the manager's perspective. This is the manager's view. As we see under the profile requests, we have a tab for employees, wherein all the requests by the employees which are reporting to the manager will be shown. The manager can decide to accept, reject, or they can view the details of the specific profile request, as we will see in the next slide. So if I make multiple changes, the manager has the ability to accept or reject the individual ones as well. After this, the employee can also edit the request that they've made. So this is a view for that, wherein they can view the request, the status, and they also have the functionality to edit it. Now, Gaurav will take care from here.
Thanks, Ansh. Good evening, everyone. Next slide, please. Yeah, coming to the approval or rejection of the profile requests. So the first step would be an employee raising a request by editing his or her profile. And this profile request we are storing in the profile request table in the HR database. And all the fields that are updated in this request, we are storing it in another table, profile request info. So here we are taking a one-to-one mapping between profile request and the employee. And one-to-many mapping between profile request and profile request info. That is, each employee would be able to create only a single profile request, but within that profile request, the employee can edit multiple fields. Once the profile request is created, once the profile request is created, the managers would be able to view all the profile requests for the employees working under them. And the managers would also have the options of selecting either a single employee or multiple employees at a time and approving or rejecting their requests at once. Or they can view the profile request for a particular employee in detail and also approve or reject the particular data fields that they feel appropriate. And once all the fields have been marked as approved or rejected, the request would automatically change its state to approved. Next slide, please. Then we have the API endpoints that we have used for building the profile request. The first six API endpoints use the put request, and we have used them for the editing features. Then we have some endpoints for viewing the profile and the subsections of the profile, and also for viewing the profile requests and the data fields that have been changed in the profile request by the managers. Next slide, please. And at last, we have a single API endpoint that we can use for that the employees can use for deleting their profile requests that they had created. Next, the restaurants team would be taking over. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Saurav. So the module restaurant was a subpart of HR service. And inside the restaurant module, we had to do 3 major tasks, basically. First was remodeling the mapping. Second was adding and editing. And the third was viewing. So as of now, we first had to remodel. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So what we had to do was basically restaurant is a backend service, and therefore for testing purposes, we created endpoints, and then in Swagger, we tested everything. So we have a few get services, post service, put service, and a delete service. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, talking about the add restaurant module. So first of all, we have this feature to add restaurants in the DB. So it is taking around 3 parameters, and along with that, it can also take an employee as a list. And then we are using it to add the restaurant in the DB and then getting a restaurant DTO response in the body. Can you move to the next one? Yeah. Now talking about adding editing employee module. So after the remodeling, which was basically mapping multiple restaurants with multiple employees, we were supposed to test it. So what we did was we fetched 3 random restaurants from the DB and added it to the employee and then saved it. So this entire thing was done so that we could test the mapping between employee and restaurant. In the next slide, you'll see that for every new restaurant that we are adding, we are trying to link an employee to that restaurant. So it can be done for an old restaurant as well. So what we are doing here is we are taking a restaurant ID and a restaurant name and the username of an employee as the input parameter. Now, after that, what is happening is for that very employee, we are fetching the restaurant details, the list of restaurants, and then we are adding the new restaurant to that list, and then we are saving it. So in the response, you can see, can you go back to the previous slide once? Yeah, so in the response, you can see that we are getting a list of restaurants, and that will be the restaurant list after updating the new restaurant. So over to Nisarg from now.
Very good afternoon, everyone. I am Nisarg from the HR restaurant team, and I'll be explaining a few services and the endpoints. So we'll be starting with the delete restaurant by the ID, which is an API endpoint, which does exactly as the name suggests. It is responsible for removing a particular restaurant mapping from a database. It basically takes a request parameter of the restaurant ID within the URL itself, and with the help of a delete endpoint, it basically removes the restaurant from the database and responds with an appropriate message. Moving on, so as Saurav had explained earlier, one of the core tasks that we were expected to do within the HR restaurant module was to move the employee to restaurant relationship from one to many to many to many, which would simply mean that one employee can work at multiple restaurants and one restaurant can hire multiple employees. So because of this, we also had to add certain view endpoints or get endpoints, which would be responsible to view all employees with respect to a restaurant ID in this particular slide, which simply means that this is to basically view all the employees working for a particular restaurant. In this case, the input parameter, just like the deletion, is simply the restaurant ID, and with the help of a simple get request, the API endpoint would respond with a list of employees. Now, the actual employee object is quite populous. It comprises of a lot of details. Therefore, we internally created a DTO to only respond with the required information, such as the employee ID, username, first name, last name, and so on and so forth. So can you please move ahead? Right. Similarly, just like the previous many-to-many relationship, just like the previous slide, because of the many-to-many relationship, we should also be able to view all the restaurants that a particular employee works at. And in this case, this is basically an API endpoint which we created as a part of the employee controller rather than the restaurant controller. So in this case, the required input parameter is the employee ID, and based on the employee ID, it will result a list of restaurants that the employee works at, as seen on the right hand side of the slide. So that is pretty much it from my end. Now moving on, Saurav will again explain the various unit tests that we have performed.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so again, we had written some test cases. We wrote around 4 test cases, and then as you can see on the screen, all the 4 test cases passed. So we planned on writing more test cases. However, due to the constraint of time, we tested out the key functions that we had at hand. So successfully, all the test cases passed, and that's pretty much it from the restaurant side. The payroll people can take over.
Hello everyone, I am Mansi and I will be continuing with the payroll submodule of HR service. Could you please go to the next slide? Okay, so for payroll we had 5 different features that we worked on. So the first one was to search an employee by the name or ID or by the department. After the employee has been searched, they were added to the payroll during the generation, that is the create payroll function. After the payroll has been created, we had the options to view, download, or delete the payroll as per the requirement. Could you go to the next slide? So as you can see, this was the basic overview. The create new button would be used to create a new payroll. Next. In the create payroll, we had an option to select a start date and the end date, which would specify the time period for which the payroll generation was required. After selecting this, you could, can you go to next slide? So after selecting the dates, you had an option to select the employee by the ID of that employee or an employee name or by the department of that employee. Once the employee has been selected, it would be added to the list. As you can see, 4 employees have been added to the list already. Moving on, you also had an option to add the fields. On clicking on this button, we had the option to add 3 different kinds of information. Could you go to next slide? So these were the, we had the option to add the basic information of the employee, which included the employee name, the address, and the details of the employee kin if required. We also had an option to add the bank details, like the name of the bank account and the account number, and also the type of employee, which we had 3 different types as hourly, monthly, and weekly, and also the salary of the account employee. After this, we had a shifts feature wherein we could get the shifts of the employees, the location, the start time, the end time, all of these things. On clicking on these check boxes and selecting these fields would automatically be added to the final payroll that would be generated for that employee. After this, I'd like Priya to continue from here.
Hello everyone, I'll be taking up a few payroll features. So this is the delete entry view. Using payroll ID, we can delete the particular payroll report. Can you go to the next slide? So after creating the payroll report, we can pass a name and save the report in the database. Can you go to the next slide? Here, we have an option to view all the payroll reports on weekly, monthly, and yearly basis, which can be changed using the above option as shown. Can you go to the next slide? So we can download payroll reports individually in the above formats. They're firstly saved in CSV format. They're converted to Excel and PDF format and are saved in the database. The corresponding report can be downloaded. Can you go to the next slide? We are creating a wide variety of endpoints for the payroll module for searching, deleting, and viewing. As you can see here, we have used post, get, and delete for payroll controller and get for search employee controller. Now, I'll be handing this over to Nitin. We'll show you a quick demo of all our module. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, good evening, everyone. So let me share my screen and then I will begin with the demo. So HR module is divided into 3 subparts. So it comes like restaurant controller. So these are the API endpoints that are exposed by them, and employee profile controller, which I was a part of. And the third one is the payroll, as the team explained earlier. So I will begin with the explanation of the, maybe show a demo of some of the APIs for the profile part, and then my colleagues will join me, Nisarg and Sarthak, to explain the other 2 parts as well. So in the employee profile controller, we have these 5 put requests that let me show you once the DB. As you can see here, so employee can raise a profile request, and these one-to-one mapping between the employee and the profile request, that employee can make a single profile request. And within that profile request, there can be multiple profile request infos. So as you can see here, so for a single profile request ID, there can be multiple profile request info IDs. So there is a one-to-many mapping between profile request and profile request info ID. So the manager, basically as shown by my colleagues earlier, the feature that manager can approve the status, reject the status, and based on the status, based on the entries, basically the manager can basically approve it, reject it, or it can still remain in pending. So these are the data fields. So let me show you once. OK. So this is one of the, these are basically the sub profiles of the my profile. So basically I can edit the statement. Say this is one of the sub profile. So I will add my username. So for this is the username for which we want to edit the statement. So this is the employee name, basically employee username in the system. So if I want to change the medical condition to say ABS, anything. So as you can see here, so this is the profile request DTO that is returned by the system to us by the API endpoint. So these are the details, that is the employee ID and the details related to employee. And what is the profile request info? That is the medical condition was changed from string to ABS, and its status is currently pending. And its approval status is also pending, which means that manager is yet to approve this request. So as you can see here, this entry will be in the database. OK, my bad. Let me just refresh it once. Okay. I think I'm not able to show you right now since there are too many claims right now. So basically this entry will get generated in the DB like the entries I showed you earlier, and manager can basically accept or reject these entries, right? And in order to view it, say view self update request of employees. So this can be done based on the manager ID. So let's try this once. So I have the manager ID here. Let me put it. This is not a valid one. Refresh the database once again because I think it's not picking up. Or if it doesn't work, then I might have to show you locally. Okay, so these are the update requests that a particular person is sending. So for a particular employee, what are the requests that I have raised? So as you can see here, we recently raised the request for medical condition, that is from string to ABS, and still its status is pending, which means that the manager is yet to approve this. So these are all the entries which are still in the pending status. So, okay. Maybe if I want to say accept a request, say a manager want to accept a request. So he can add the employee ID and say whatever he wants to accept. Say medical condition. I hope the spelling is correct. Yeah. So the manager can set it to approve, and then once later the employee can check the status, it will be marked as approved. So this is for the manager. So manager can also bulk accept multiple employees at a time. So he can pass a list of employee IDs and it can be accepted. It can accept multiple employees at once. So this is the delete feature. So in case the employee wants to delete his request from the table from his list of requests, then he has to pass his profile request ID and say which of the fields he wants to remove, say medical condition. So he can basically delete the entry. So now Nisarg will continue with the restaurant part because of the time constraint. I can't show you all of the APIs. So if needed, we can do it at end. So Nisarg, to you.
Hi. I'll just quickly share my screen. Let me know if you guys can see it.
Yeah,
is
Nisarg,
my
it's
screen visible? Okay, all right, thank you. So I'll mostly be explaining the restaurant controller. Over here, there is a post request which is responsible for adding a new restaurant. So right now, basically this is a restaurant ID followed by the restaurant name and an employee username, which will be mapped with this particular restaurant. On execution, it'll result in an error because no employee is found with the username Nisarg42. Therefore, an employee or a user of the employee type actually needs to exist before you can add it to a restaurant, which is the expected behavior of the system. So over here, I'll simply add a user or of the employee type with the Nisarg42 username. On execution, it will simply give this response body which basically denotes that it is of 200 type, which is okay that the employee has been added with the username Nisarg42. On performing this post operation, right, we can see this that it's successful 200, which is okay. So followed by that, we have a few other endpoints that I would like to go over. So for instance, the one dealing with fetch is to acquire the information of a particular restaurant with respect to its ID. So on adding the ID, we get details of the particular restaurant, such as the name and the various employees working for the restaurant. Okay. At the same time, moving on, let me deal with the put operation which is responsible to edit an existing restaurant. So, right, this is the restaurant ID that I had copied previously, and the restaurant name, as you can see over here, is test restaurant. Now, what if we want to change it to something like test restro 123 or something like that, and also want to add another user with the username string, which already exists. Like string is basically a valid username, it is there in the database. So on execution, we have response body 200, which means okay. And if we fetch the same restaurant again, over here we can see that a new user has been added with the first name and the last name Joy Lobo, and even the restaurant name has been updated. It's been changed. So now moving on, what if we want to fetch all of the employees for the particular restaurant that I had explained earlier? So this endpoint does exactly that. It gives a list of employees, which basically has the various details for the particular employee. And at the same time, this method is to obtain all of the restaurants present in the database, and it does that. There's a couple of them present here. So, okay, followed by this, let me quickly move to the employee part, where there is a method which is responsible to get all the restaurants that a particular employee works at. So just a second. For that, I'll need the information of the employee as well. So okay, let's say for Joy Lobo clearly works at 2 restaurants, which is with the following IDs. So the expected result should be that it returns in 2 restaurants, and it does exactly that. Now finally, moving on to the last endpoint, which is for the deletion of a restaurant. Yeah, so let's just delete the restaurant we had created. Gives us a successful message. Now if we try fetching it, it'll simply say that yeah, no restaurant found with a particular endpoint. Now again, I think it is important to note that just because the restaurant has been deleted, it does not mean that the employees are also deleted. So over here, Joy Lobo still exists, and so does Nisarg Shah. It's simply that they're not mapped to any restaurants anymore. So that is it from my end regarding the restaurant part. I'll be handing over to Sarthik for the remaining stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I hope I'm audible, and I just let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Yes, Arthur, your screen is visible.
Yeah, so basically I was part of the payroll team, and we worked on the payroll creation part, and also some other features like downloading a payroll report in a certain format, and also deletion, etc. So I would just like to go over the few endpoints that we have exposed, as you can see here in the payroll controller section and the search employee controller section. So basically in the payroll controller, the first endpoint is a simple endpoint to create a payroll basically. So what does it do? So basically it takes the attributes of the employee, like for as mentioned by Mansi about the sections or the fields that an employee has, such as banking details, his first name, middle name, his kin details, etc., etc. So we have a few payrolls ready, so I am not going to create one right now. So yeah, I would like to go on and show you how do we view the payroll. So basically we just have to give a from date and to date, and all the payrolls that lie in between these dates will be visible. So I'll just the date here. Let's see. So yeah, as expected. So here are the 2 payroll reports. All this gibberish is because these are files stored in the form of byte arrays into the database. And so yeah, in this manner you can view all the payroll reports. Now talking about the download. So basically what we can do is
just let me go through it once. Yeah, let me just copy this payroll ID right here because I would like to show you on downloading this payroll report right here. So yeah, so what does this endpoint want? This endpoint wants the format. It can either be PDF, XLS, that is an Excel file, or a CSV. So for now, I'll just give XLS and add items. So I'll just put the payroll report ID right here. And as soon as I execute, so basically the Swagger UI does not recognize this, but as soon as I paste this URL in a new window of in a new tab of the browser, you can see here a zip file gets downloaded. So in this manner, and this zip file contains the downloaded file. In this manner, these things work, and the delete is pretty simple. You just paste the ID here, you execute. Sorry, yeah, I would have to take the ID back from here now. So you take the ID, you paste that here, and it gets executed. Deleted payroll report with ID, so and so. Now, when creating a payroll report, there was a field where we can search for employees either by their name or their IDs or their department. So basically, I would just like to get a list of all the employees that are present right now, so that I can just get an ID from one of those. So basically, yeah. Okay, so I'll just take this ID. So as you can see, the name is Spandan right here. So now I'll just go and search for this employee using his ID and see how this works. So yeah, works perfectly fine, and it gives out the details about Spandan and whatever his other details are. Now, to search by name, so all the employees that contain whose names either the first name, middle name, or last name contains the substring that the user enters right here get listed. For example, to list out Spandan, I would just have to I would not have to write Spandan, or not mandatorily have to write SPAN. I can either just write, for example, Panda, and you see you get Spandan right here. So yeah, and talking about department ID, so sorry, department name basically. So this had a transitive dependency with the employees. So for the same employee, because we are working with Spandan right now. So yeah, let's see. And all these searches and the input that the user gives are all ignoring cases. The cases do not matter really. So we'll just see for the employees working in the department TEC, how many. So yeah, Spandan, I knew he was there. I don't think any other employee will be there. So yeah, in this manner, these endpoints that are that are exposed by the payroll team work. Yeah, so that's all from my side. I would like to hand it over to others. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarthak and team, for that very quick demonstration. Moving on ahead, let me know when my screen is visible. Okay. Is my screen visible yet?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on ahead, we have next the inventory implementation. Inventory. Talking about inventory, it was a huge module. We were given a plethora of features to implement. I think the count was around 74. So definitely team breakdowns were needed, and task quite a good good management was required to complete all the features and the module in itself. So looking at this one, the way we implemented this, right, and we were 68 Java interns, and we were told to implement the ROS application. So we were divided into two teams, Team A and Team B. Both would implement the same entire ROS app. This was done in the interest to promote the explorer side of us, so that we can come up with maybe the best possible implementation of latest Java features and other database implementation features as well. So in the inventory, that was done the same. We had Team A and Team B. Team B, I'm representing Team B's implementation side. So this is how we implemented. To remove all the boring information, I would on an abstract view, I would present this class diagram. So this is how we implemented it. Inventory is encompassing the major modules such as supplier, purchase order, stock period, and products. So for any restaurant, there are suppliers. These suppliers initially are external, and then later on they can be transitioned into internal suppliers, or the restaurants themselves become internal suppliers when they're sending their products and items from one restaurant to the other. That would come under the site transfer module. Then for all the purchase orders, whether they are approved and rejected, appropriate reasons, attachments need to be there, and invoice would be generated for an exported approved purchase order. Then we have the stock. Stock was can be pretty confusing, and you can easily get lost in it. So looking at it, I would say that stock period would represent the current open stock period. So let's say we are refreshing our stock every week. So this Monday, I would have started my stock period, and the previous weekend, the weeks before that, they all come under the stocks. They are the closed stocks. Stock period would represent the current stock. So whenever we are creating a new stock, the current stock would get closed. It would get transitioned to a stock object. And after that, stock details, summary, balance, everything has been approved. It would transition to an approved stock. So for a stock period, the relevant details would be when did it start, the stock items, what all was already there with the restaurant from the previous week. Are they carrying any items from the previous week? Was there a wastage of items? Then also in the stock, we can also view all the purchase orders for new items which we created orders for. Now, looking at it, splitting the explanation in a modular way, Srinidhi would go ahead and explain the supplier module.
Hello, good evening all. I am Srinidhi and I am here to explain about the supplier module. So as we can see from the UI, so there is a list of suppliers that a restaurant can view in the supplier view screen. Also, the restaurant has an option to search the supplier by a supplier name, as well as add new supplier. And in the list of suppliers, we can see there are options to edit, delete, and view the supplier details. So if the restaurant wants to add a new supplier, we can see there is a new add new supplier screen available. So as Ajay was mentioning about the two types of suppliers, external supplier and internal supplier. So there are two types of suppliers a restaurant can add information on, but there's a condition, that is a supplier can be an internal supplier only if it has been an external supplier once. And in the add new supplier UI itself, we have a add product master button, which helps to add product master is nothing but a list of products that the supplier is going to supply to the restaurant. And down we can see the product master UI, which is the product related details like product code, name that the restaurant will add, and also an option to import a CSV file which has the same details. So let's go into detail about what are the features that we implemented in regard to the supplier module. Next slide. So there were our role in this project was to implement the backend API endpoints that are required for the UI. And there are around 17 features that we had to implement. And all the features revolved around creating API endpoints, which for viewing and editing and updating and retrieving, basically CRUD operations related to the supplier and the product master. So the current status of these features are all the features have been implemented and unit test has been done on it, and it is currently being pushed to the developer server. Then let's go to the next system slide to see the Swagger screenshot. And we have the API endpoints which are available. So here on the right hand side, we can see a sample supplier JSON. So when we call the supplier endpoint, so this is how the response would look like. And a supplier has the return response would have an address, which is another nested JSON. And similarly, product master, which has a list of products available. So each supplier has one address associated with it and one bank account, and also one product master. And this product master has a list of products inside it. And looking at the Swagger screenshot, we have the CRUD operations related to the supplier and the product master feature. So the next slide, we can take a look at the sample code that we have implemented. So here we can see, and one of the features that is to edit the product master code. That is, when we have a product in the supplier and we want to edit some details. So we this is one of the service for that, and we are having certain constraints like checking whether the price is not negative and checking and throwing the corresponding error exceptions needed for that. For example, here is that if the price change is there, we have to ensure that the effective date is also being changed. And if all these things are satisfied, then we do an update on the product. And similarly, we have another check on internal supplier. So as mentioned earlier, we have to check if that internal supplier was an existing supplier. So we do that check, and if it is not, we throw a supplier not found exception. And if it satisfies the condition, then we save that internal supplier and return the response. And finally, one more thing we have related to internal supplier is a query to insert the values into the internal supplier table. So this query is called once we have checked the verification that it is an existing supplier. Now on to Amalia for the next one.
Thank you, Srinidhi. Hi, everyone. I am Amolya. I belong to the Team A inventory. So the inventory module created by Team A and Team B did not have any code base. Both the teams did it from scratch. So I will be diving into the purchase order submodule. Here, basically, what this is, once the suppliers are created and the products provided by particular supplier are created, the purchase order module can be used to create the list of products that we want to order. So when we click on the create new, we will have an option to select the supplier and add the products that we want along with the quantity. And once we finish filling, we can either save it as a draft or we can submit it. Once the purchase order is sent into the submit database, it requires manager approval or it can be rejected with a particular reason. Can you go to the next slide, please? So these are the features that we have mainly in the purchase order. It mostly comprises of creating, viewing, and saving it as drafts, and it has conversions from like once you save it as a draft and you want to submit it, and then when you submit, you want to approve it or reject it, and once it is rejected, it can also be resubmitted again for approval. Yeah, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is the purchase order controller feature list in Swagger. So there are so many features, it couldn't fit in one picture. So I just pasted the top few features over here. And in the side, you can see the model of a approved purchase order. Of course, there are other classes for submitted, rejected, and draft purchase order. But just for reference, I have placed the approved purchase order. Next slide, please. So this is a code snippet where I am trying to reject a submitted order. So what the function is basically doing is it will try to find the submitted order. If it is not present, it will throw an exception that it is not found with the given ID. If it is present, the rejected message taken from the user will be added to the class and it will be saved in the rejected repo. For the endpoint, we are taking the ID of the submitted order, purchase order, and the message that has to be provided for the rejection reason. That's it. Yeah, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so this is the invoice. Once the purchase orders are submitted and approved, an invoice can be generated, and the invoice basically has 6 features. They are like you can view the invoices weekly, monthly, or yearly by providing the input as such, and you can view the invoice in detail and download them in bulk or individually. So as you can see, when you have a detailed invoice view, it has also the net prices, the VAT, subtotal, and total values printed over here. Next slide, please. So yeah, these are the basic features that we have implemented an invoice viewing as a list and downloading and view an individual invoice in detail. Next slide. Yeah. So this is the basic structure of the invoice that we are having. It is the approved purchase. Invoice can be generated for an approved purchase order only. So it will have all the details of the supplier, the products that we bought, the purchase products that we have in the quantity and all. When we view in detail, the subtotal, VAT and total are also provided. Yeah, next slide. You can go to the next slide. So we have created custom queries to extract the list of invoice for a particular month, year, or between a start date and end date. So this is basically weekly. When you enter an end date for weekly, all the invoices that have been generated from that day to the past 7 days will be displayed. Here the endpoint is one date is taken, which is the end date that we are taking. Basically, as I told, the past 7 days invoices will be displayed over there. Yeah, next slide.
Yeah,
next slide.
Thank you, Amelia, for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Ajay. I'm back again. These two screens, they represent all the entire confusion and the maze that the stock module is. It doesn't really, represent it realistically how big of a module the stock is. So let me just tell you all, as I explained in the class model previously. In the stock, there will be the stock can be of two types. Either it will be open or the closed. Open would represent the current stock. For example, we're talking about, let's say, the current week's stock, right? And the closed would talk about the previous stock periods that have been closed. So when we go to the stock module, we'll get a list of all the closed stocks that were there in the past. And for the current open stock, we get a button. We can click on it and we are presented with this summary. In the summary, we are actually taking inputs from all the previous modules that Srinidhi Amulya explained before. We take a look at the opening stocks, looking at all the previous orders, look at the previous stock period and get the closing stock from there. Looking at in the current stock period, all the purchase orders that have been placed, then the site transfers or rather the purchase orders from internal supplier, both are equivalent. We look at them, then all the items that have been wasted, and finally the stock balance would represent how much of what product is with us currently. Then we can finally add a close stock at the end of a stock period session. So there we would need to update that all the quantity of the products which we have with us at that moment, and the status of the stock would change, and we would have a new opening stock that would start from that moment itself. Then again, there were a lot of features. I have a small subset of them. They comprise majorly comprising retrieving, computing all the various values according to complex formulas. For this one, net sales, actual cost of sales, these have to be computed taking all three purchase orders, site transfers, wastage into consideration. So majority of the features were regarding that. Then finally we could approve the close stock period after the manager has reviewed the invoices that are generated and checks the generated invoice value is the same as the supplier provided us with. Then we could also added the wastage items within a current stock period. Suppose for example, if we would have entered wrong product or wrong amounts, we could definitely change that. We could even change that for a closed stock period that is still in the draft. So once it is approved, no details can be updated there. Looking at a few Swagger screenshots, this is yet again a subset of all the APIs in the stock module, and a couple of JSON entities which represent the various entities that are included in the stock module. We have the stock period and the stock. So we see that in a stock period, we have the starting date, opening value, wasted items, and the stock item list. And when we close that stock, it transitions to a stock class, and there we add the ending date, cost of sales, closing value. These things are updated, and the status of the stock, or rather the type, is changed to closed. Then stock item and wasted item, they are pretty much in relation with the product class. So they take in all the products and store the quantity and maintain the relationship for a specific stock period. These are a few code snippets. I've been talking about a lot of transitioning where stock period is going from stock period to stock. Then the stock would go from closed stock to approved stock. So that is nothing but if you look at it from the view of inheritance, this is pretty much downcasting. So a super class, I mean a super parent is we are converting that to a child parent without changing the identities for it. So this is how we do it. We run native queries, do an insert there, and then fetch it from using this. So one saving help here is that we could save the childs with superclass repository as well. Then we definitely did the unit testing. Good code is always coupled with good testing. So that was also included here. We have added unit testing for around 70% of the APIs, and it is still the count is still increasing. So yeah, before we go to the budgeting, let's do a quick demonstration. So that we don't get lost in the whole catalog of supplier stock APIs, I'll just show for supplier. So let's say I want to retrieve all the suppliers that exist. I'll execute it. I get a list of all the suppliers. We have already populated the database with mock data. So this is there. So we can also retrieve the supplier from a name. So let's say the name of a supplier is Quinu. And I would go to this API and I would say fetch the supplier with this name Quinu, and it fetches it accordingly. So the other APIs are pretty much doing the same things. The put APIs for editing a product master, where for a supplier we can edit the catalog of products that it is providing us with, and then for editing an internal supplier as well, we could transition an external supplier from to an internal supplier. So that is also all these APIs account for. So moving ahead, Amulya would show a quick demo of purchase order and invoice.
Yeah, so I'll quickly share my screen. Please let me know when it's visible. I hope it's visible. Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, Amulya.
Okay, so I will be showing the basic, there are so many features in inventory module. So I will be showing the basic features like how to add a draft and how to submit it after adding, like that. So right now I'm using I'm creating a purchase order for the supplier ID 12, and I'm using a product with ID 1 and quantity as 10. And once I execute it, the draft will be added, and we can check the view purchase order drafts. Yeah, so we can check the list of drafts that are there using this endpoint when we execute it. Since we have already populated it, there are so many, but the latest one is this one. So I'm gonna take this ID as 92. So we can submit this. Since it is in drafts now, we can take this ID and submit this draft. So what I'm going to do is just a second. 92 ID. So I will be submitting this draft, that is draft to submit using a particular ID. I'm gonna put 92, and if I execute, the draft will be submitted. Due to time constraint, I cannot show all the features that are there right now. So I will just show how the purchase order is moving from submitted to the approved. So we can view the submitted using this one, and when we execute it, we can get all the submitted. These all are submitted, as you can see, with the products name, the type, everything has been added over here. So the ID is 94, the latest one. So we can approve that by doing submitted to approved and put the ID and execute. Yeah, so the purchase order has been approved now. So when the purchase order is approved, we can check the invoice. Like now I'll show the invoice by ID. So I already have an invoice in the database, so I'm just gonna execute that. So when I execute it, the response body is in the form of a string right now. We can change it to JSON, but what I wanted to show is in the response body, if you can see, the quantity, the net prices for the products, the subtotal, VAT, and total are being calculated and populated in the JSON. So that will be returned in the response body. Sorry, yeah, response body. So we can view the invoices list yearly or monthly or by giving a date for weekly. I can show you the for yearly, like if you execute it, it is showing that this invoice has been generated for this year 2021 and it is approved, and you can also see the products that are there, the quantity, and yeah, the approved date and the invoice date as well. So all these are generated. So I would like to ask Ajay to continue with the demonstration for the stocks module.
Yeah, Mulya, thanks for that quick demonstration.
Thank you.
Let me know when my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, moving ahead, just adding the closing note on the invoice demonstration that Amulya showed. We can generate the invoices and we can download. So since Swagger doesn't support viewing the generated invoice, if it is a PDF, CSV or those, it shows as a bytes. Let's go to this one, Postman. It's the same API. I'm sending a batch of invoice IDs. These are already there in the databases. So when I send this request, the form, I should get a PDF with the invoice generated. So I'll just send it and I'll see here in the invoice generated, minus all the photos, formatting and other things in the PDF, the values are getting generated in the PDF correctly. For every invoice, there is a separate sheet. So since I passed in 2 invoices, I have 2 sheets with all the relevant values, calculations, and these things. Then moving ahead with the demonstration for stock. Same thing, stock has a huge catalog. I would just demonstrate this one. So let's say in my database currently, when I view the stock period, I see a list of closed stocks and a single open stock. So this is representing the current open stock period. So it started today according to the database. So if I were to add a stock period, what it would do is it would close the existing stock period and return to me a new stock period with a new ID. So just to keep a track of it, I'll just remember the first 3-4 characters. So current open stock has 32F9. So if I were to try this API out and execute, this is returning me a new stock period. Obviously the stock items and wasted items will be empty. It just started now. So the ID is completely different from there. If I were to refresh my database, the new ID is being stored here. The previous one, the 32F9, the status has been set to closed. Also, since it is closed, it should show up in the stock table as well. So just to verify that, we'll go to stock table and we see that it is saved as a draft. It hasn't been approved yet, and we have the cost of sales computed. So this is that, and yeah, I mean, look, this feature is pretty much taking inputs from all other all other entities that are there in the stock class. It takes a look at all the existing stocks, existing opening periods, purchase orders, invoices. So we can also view the summary, and looking at the prototype, when we look at the stock period, we get the summary and the stock balance. Stock balance, we see the product opening quantity, this one, and the total amount of stock that is left with us at this point of time, that should be showed here. So I would just go for a stock balance demonstration. I would just take a stock that has been closed and approved. I will enter it and it would display all the products for, and if they were wasted, ordered, and this. So since the stock which I took, it was started today and closed today only. So the wasted quantity definitely would be 0, and the opening quantity also would be ordered. In the mock database that I have, I've already added purchase orders to show values being computed here. So this displays this for each product, wasted, total, product ordered, opening, and the grand total. This is pretty much consistent with what needs to be displayed in the database. We send this back as a response, and this is how our APIs are functioning. So yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes the entire stock module. We can go ahead with the budgeting and forecasting.
Hello everyone, I'm Anusha. So I have been working on the budgeting and forecasting module. Next slide, please. So this is the prototype of the module, and we see that there are 3 types of budget. The first one is net sales, and there are labor cost and cost of sales respectively. Next slide. So these were the features that were assigned to us, and we had about 11 view features, and edit, add and import 3 features each. Next slide. So this is one of the view features, and in this you can view whatever budget you want to view, and it will present all of the data that is present in the database till the current day. Next slide. This is another feature, that is to add a budget. You can enter all of the details manually and click on the add button, or you could click on the import button and import a CSV file which would add the data to your database. Next slide. So this is the add button which I was talking about. Next slide. This is another view function basically. So in this, you can view daily budget or weekly or monthly budget. In addition to this, we also have a feature in which we can view the custom date range budget, where you specify the start date and end date, and you could view the graph respectively. Next slide.
Hi everyone, this is Riddhi. I'm also working with the budgeting team. So these are the key highlights of our project. You can our code has been organized in such a way that you can easily find the code that you're looking for and make the changes easily. We have reusable components like util classes, date util classes to reduce the need to repeat the code over and over. We've unit tested our code, and we've used Postgres for our database, and Git we've used to maintain and merge our code as we work together. Next slide, please. As you take a look at the class diagram, you'll notice that we've generated UIDs for each object. This ensures that each of the object has a unique identification. This ID is generated in the backend, and since we have multiple restaurants which use the ROS software, we will have multiple entries for the same day. So most of our queries use the fields restaurant ID and date for the operations. Apart from this, you will notice the rest of the fields are from the UI that you've already seen. Next slide, please. Here you can see the Swagger screenshots. As with many of the real-time projects, ours also evolved with time, and the implemented features are more than what was initially planned. Initially, only 20 features were planned, but here we've implemented 26 endpoints. We've implemented view daily, weekly, monthly, and custom date range for all of the entities that you saw in the previous slide. We've also added a view complete feature later. We've also added endpoints for creating a new object, editing objects, and for importing CSV files for the entities. Apart from this, we also have the budget API, which returns the budget for each day and for a custom date range. Can you go to the next one, please? Yeah. So here you can see the code snippets. Here you can see that the code is made as modular, unit testable, and readable as possible. We've added Java docs to explain every piece of code in a really short summary. You can see that the controller's endpoints, entry points for the add feature as well as the edit feature. We've used the best coding practices, and you can see the service layers code for the import function in the bottom. You'll also notice that we've described every piece of code for the Swagger UI using the operation tag. We've also raised appropriate exceptions wherever needed and send them back to the user with the HTTP status. And we've also logged the time taken to perform each of these actions to make sure that we have a comprehensive look at the overall performance of the API. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So here you can see that the code for the get functions, which you'll be seeing in a much more detailed way in the demo. Or you can see the get functions for the weekly and for monthly and for the whole data. So now I'll hand it over to Anusha.
So after we were done with the code, we continued with unit testing. And this is the screenshot of one of the tests that we had performed. And we have tested each and every feature of ours. And since we had to follow the best practices, so we continued testing all of our features. Next slide, please. So this is the folder structure. We maintained a multi-layer architecture in which the project was divided into controller, exceptions, models, repository, and service implementations. We have also followed other best practices like error logging and exception handling, etc. Next slide, please. So once we were all done, our project was deployed on the Jenkins server by the DevOps team, and this is a screenshot of that. Next slide. And this is one of the report of the deployment. I guess we can proceed with the demo.
Hello all. Please let me know when my screen is visible. Is it visible?
Yes, Sudhanshu.
Okay. So hello all. I, Sudhanshu Mahajan, on behalf of the budgeting team, is here to show you the demo on the APIs which we created. So talking about the APIs, they can be broadly classified into the cost of sale APIs, net sale APIs, budget APIs, and the labor cost APIs. So we'll just test. Let's say we'll test for the net sale API. We'll just try to add a net sale into the database. For the restaurant ID, I'll just give one, and I'm adding this for the 15th September only today. You can see that the 200 OK status has come. Now we can check that if the database is able to actually retrieve, we are able to retrieve the value from the database using this net sale daily API. See, this value which we just entered, we are able to get that. Also, there is one more API, the weekly API. Here we can add any date for the week, and it will give us the data for the whole week. Like I'll just enter for 13 September and restaurant ID 1. We can see it gave us the data for 13, 14, 15 date. This date we just entered. Apart from that, we have a monthly API which works the same way. We can add any date for the month and it will return the data for the whole month. And apart from that, we have net sale complete. This will return the complete net sale data for a particular restaurant. Suppose we want the restaurant, we want the data for restaurant ID 1. See, all the dates we have got from the database, which are there. And apart from that, the labor cost APIs and the cost of sale API are very similar. They are implemented in a very similar way. Let me just talk about the budgets API. So if I'll just talk about the budget daily, for a particular date and for a particular restaurant, it will give me all the three things: the labor cost, the cost of sales, and the net sale. For the date, let's say I'll enter. And for the restaurant ID 1, you can see that the labor cost, there is no data for the labor cost in for the restaurant ID. The net sale, we have the value, and the sales of cost, we have got the list. So as we were two teams working on the same features, so I would like to request Krithik to take the discussion further and explain the rest of the APIs.
Thank you, Sudhanshu. Hello, everyone. I'm Krithik. I'll be explaining some of the other features that were part of the budgeting module. So firstly, I'll just share my screen. Can one of you tell me if it's visible?
Yeah,
Yes, Pratik.
Okay. So to start off with, I'll just add a record to the database using the add cost of sales API. So let's say. So this API takes in multiple parameters like the date and the cost that was incurred for food, drinks, and takeaway. We just enter some values. The total need not be entered by the user itself. It will be auto-completed. So you can see the response that has been added in the database, even though the user did not give the day. That has also been auto-completed, and the total also been auto-completed. And to verify that, I'll also be showing another API and we'll be verifying the same. So this is another API which will show all the records for a particular month. So because I added it for October, so we can see that the record that we just added, that was for 17th October, is also present. And another API that is there is editing a particular record. Yeah. So we know that we have added a record for 17th October. So if we try and edit that, so let me say the food costs were actually 80. 10. So the API actually returns the updated value, and we can also verify that using this API. So we can see that the values have changed. And another feature that is present in this API is if a date is entered which is not actually present in the database, it throws an error. This particular date is not present in the database. So it throws an error saying there's no record for the given date. And this way, user can make sure he's not adding new data using the wrong API or that he is actually editing the right ones. So that's it from the budgeting team. So I'll hand it over to Spandan with the presentation.
Hi, thank you. See, the thing is, that is the end of the presentation. So thank you, everyone. That was the demo. That was the code review. If anyone has any questions, please address them. The members of the particular teams are here, so they'll answer to the best of their ability.
Thank you all. So unfortunately, Shanmuga, who is an SME at for the Java stream, had to drop in a little early, but he has left a message for you all, wherein he said that the project functionality and technically demonstrated very well by the team about the ROS, and the granularity was very precise. So kudos to all of you for understanding, implementing, and articulating the functional and the technical terms. So good job done there. That's the message from him. I would now request Savita or Vignesh if you have any questions for the GTs.
Actually, I share the same feeling as him. I feel really impressed with the presentation and the areas which they have worked. And most likely they are like very much suitable in day out regular dev activities would be similar to what they have done, and really impressed on be it developing APIs and demoing through Swagger or Postman, or even building the UI. So it's a pretty good job.
Yeah, true. I agree with Vignesh. This is Savita here. The projects and the demonstration are very impressive. To see the technologies used and the requirement analysis, the challenges, how they have particularly put in as a presentation and explained. It does show that they have put in a lot of effort. Good job, everyone. But this is just a start. And here you have a very clear requirement. You do have a very clear in as like in black and white. You do this, it happens. But in the real world, real projects, there are many unknowns, many challenges. And then there are many constraints. The constraints are not just related to the projects. The constraint would be related to timeline, business dependencies, business, different departments involved. So many in your control, some beyond your control. So I don't want to scare you, but it's a very nice and challenging world. Welcome to the MBS group. It's nice. The projects were really very impressive. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So if there are any questions from the GT's end, you would like to ask Vignesh or Savita at this point in time, please feel free.
Yeah, Tapsi, I would like to go ahead with one question. Doesn't really work. It's not related to the technical side, but one question throughout this entire project and maybe through the entire training for all the GTs has been, how close are we to what we are expected to be? I mean, I'm pretty sure Vignesh, Savita, they all are experienced. It's not their first time with GTs or some, so they would have a pretty much idea of how close we are to what is expected of us when we start working.
I feel in terms of readiness, I mean, with respect to the demos and the presentations and the way we carry forwarded the information over here, I think you guys are already there. It's just like what Savita has said. It will go a bit complex more, but it is a good good step first, I would say. So it's
Yeah.
not like just the technologies. You will always have to learn one technology or other technology for the stories of the ones which you are developing, but the ones which you need to carry forward is the understanding of all the challenges which you have done and what was the solution and how you were able to derive them. It is just that if you relate it, you might have faced the solution, faced the problem earlier, and you could relate the solution as well. So that's the important thing to carry forward.
Yeah. If I have to say this place here, I think this whole mentoring process, I would put it as a prototype for you guys to see how to learn new technologies and how to put it into the project. But when in the real industries, you may not get such a formal project, formal things. No one will come and teach you, say that do this, and all. There will be a guidance, there will be a coach, but more is the journey would start for you to learn. So, but if you have done this good and then you have that learning attitude in the mind, then I think you are already almost like 50% there. The rest of the 50% is your effort and the time, the experience, what you get.
True, very true. So anything else that's on your mind that you would want to discuss, put across? Indeed, it was a great job done by you guys. The hard work clearly shows in the work that you put in.
Tapsi, just to confirm, so yeah, we will be having our orientation or what you can say onboarding or induction on 22nd of this month, right?
Right. So let me clarify that. While the GTs from your colleagues who were in the streams of C++, DevOps and QA would be joining their project teams from tomorrow. However, there was feedback that we had received from the management that Angular is very much required for the Java stream, and hence from tomorrow you will continue with your Angular training, which will go on from 16th until 21st. And while I know it might bring in a little, might be a little unsettling, but just bear with us for this Saturday. We really need your support here. Go ahead and attend your training so that you can join your project team as soon as possible. So on 22nd and 23rd, we have Amadeus Business Induction scheduled for the non-interns. Now, when I say non-interns, is because those of you interned with us have already attended the induction in the month of March. So the new joinees or who've not interned with us will be attending the Amadeus Business Induction on 22nd and 23rd, 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And on 24th is when we will have Amadeus Labs orientation. That is a session which is specifically about your how does the payroll works at Amadeus, how does your career progression and your insurance and all those things. And hence that is a session which all of you would be attending together on 23rd from 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. again. And from there on, you will be with your project teams and will hit the floor running. So I hope that clarifies the question.
So for the interns, like us, so 22nd and 23rd, we do not have any scheduled meetings, right?
You don't have any scheduled meetings, but you will be with your project teams. So you can connect with your buddies, you can connect with your managers. They have already been informed about it. So reach out to them, connect with them, and take it forward from there.
Okay, and then on 24th, there is the labs orientation.
Orientation, which will be only for the first half of the day. So second half of the day, you are still available with your team.
All right, thank you.
Right, any other questions at this point in time?
No, Tapsi, nothing of the like for now, at least.
Great. Soumya is here. Thank you so much, Soumya, for thank you so much for working so hard with these young engineers. Really appreciate your efforts that you've put in. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tapsi. It was nice meeting you all. I hope presentation went good, right? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all cleared by the comments from the SMEs.
Yes.
Savita is right here with us. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, team.
All right. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, Savita, for being here. And I think Vignesh had to drop off. He had another meeting. So, So good job done, and another couple of days to go for the training, and hopefully we'll see you all in one or the other common meetings that we have going forward. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.